Today we're going to talk about fitting a field, getting it ready to plant. The discussion is going to be a little bit different than normal. This is the 15th of May. We've got nothing done. Basically, 5% of the state is planted on both corn and beans. We've got a lot of ground that needs to be leveled. We've got a lot of weeds that need to be killed. We've got a lot of whole season ahead of us, and we're over a month behind. So the answers today are going to be a little bit different than they would be in a normal situation. We're already in the what we call the 80-20 rule, where if 80% of that field is ready to go, we're going to have to go, so we don't let the other 20% sacrifice the yield loss due to delayed planting. Now, when we're in those kind of conditions, we have to also be aware of what's going to take place in the soil. The field that we're in today, for instance, if it was level, I could plant it. But unfortunately it's not level. So we're going to have to, bring a leveling pass in here to get it fitted for the planter. For some, that's going to be horizontal tillage of a soil finisher, field cultivator disc. Others, it's going to be vertical tillage. And you're going to have two different answers as you look at the soil. But how do we know if the soil is ready for our tillage pass? And that's what we'll take a look at. So as we look at this soil here at the surface, it's actually drying nice today for a change, and it crumbles. It doesn't ribbon. It's one of the reasons why we say we could plant this. If we had this field level enough and we came in here, we'd have to be what we call teaching the planter to dance. We would have to make sure that that planter stays up on top of this drier soil, and we put the seed down below. That means that row cleaner is going to be pretty light, just moving residue out of the way. One of the biggest things we run into, guys have too much downforce on the planter, too deep on the row cleaner, and we move all this dry soil off the surface, and then we're planting right into the muck. We got to stay on top of this. We got to whisk the residue away, and in a lot of cases we're going to be carrying the row unit so we don't have too much downforce, and then we're going to drive on this and plant below it. So this is plantable if it was level. But as you can see today, this isn't level enough to plant corn especially. We're going to have a leveling pass to get good depth control, good seed to soil contact. So what I use as a tool out here becomes part of what makes a decision. Do I go now or do I wait another day or so? And if we're going to run horizontal tillage and we're going to run, let's say, 4.5, 5 inches deep, my recommendation is dig down to that tillage depth. So we're going to get down there at that 4-inch mark and look at the soil right below that. And what kind of condition is it in? And when we pick up that soil, we're going to ball it up, see if we can ribbon it between our fingers. And of course in this soil we can. Which means if I bring a soil finisher in here today to fit this field, I am going to put in a substantial compaction layer. Now again, that still may not stop us from doing it based on the calendar where we're at, and this may only represent 20% of the field, not 80% of the field. But at least you know at this point, if you're going to make a run in here with a soil finisher, you're going to put in compaction, and you're going to have to deal with that compaction throughout the whole season, and maybe even take care of it next fall when we get done. With the vertical harrow, it's a little bit different because you're going to just take these peaks, knock them into the valleys. So we can actually work this today with a vertical harrow and keep the angle as straight as possible as far as our disc gangs, if we have a harrow that can change disc gang. And we're going to keep as shallow as possible, with the job is to level this back up for planting and also take out our wheel tracks. This is dry enough to vertical harrow today. We won't put in a compaction layer. With the machine, the problem will be the tire, and how aggressive we are where the tire tracks run becomes part of the problem. Can we plant in that tire track without stunted corn? So I want to take you to the tire track here today and show you how do we evaluate a tire track on the piece of equipment that we're going to put on the soil if we're running vertical tillage. Okay, so as we look at the wheel track, and that's our big concern when we talk about vertical tillage. What's this wheel track going to do if I'm leveling the field and I have to come and plant through this later? One, we want to make sure the harrow does clean up the wheel track, and that in here is not going to be too hard to do. This right through here, the harrow can break this down. The question is, what's going to happen down here in the bottom of your lug? So that's where we have to look, is what kind of conditions are we at the bottom of that lug. So we go down there and we peel up the bottom of that lug, and see what kind of condition that soil's in and whether it breaks. And this doesn't. This is going to ball up. This is going to ribbon, just like when we were digging 5 inches deep. What that tells me is when we level this field, we are going to put in a wheel track, and corn planted in this wheel track is going to have to negotiate the compaction. So you're apt to see some stunting in the wheel track. So while the field is ready for vertical tillage across the field, the wheel track area is going to give us trouble. Planter's going to have to chatter through here, and we're going to have slow growth. Now, still may not be a deal breaker if this is 20% of the field and the rest of it I can dig in that wheel track and it crumbles and breaks up for me. But when it ribbons like this does today, just know if you go ahead, that wheel track is going to show up. You're going to have stunted rows wherever corn is planted above the wheel track. Soybeans as well. We don't worry too much about soybeans. Neighboring rows will help fill in that situation. Again, may not be a deal breaker based on the time and the calendar of the year, but it's good to know when you can go. So if I could break this off and it was crumbly, then we wouldn't worry about this wheel track and we'd be off and running. Today, this wheel track is going to show up. Don't forget our upcoming Farm Journal Corn Soybean College. One of the breakouts at that college will be working with your operators and teaching them how to plant in all different conditions. We talk about teaching the planter to dance. That's going to be part of that workout. How do we plant in these tougher conditions like we're facing this year?